Welcome to the Becoming a Pilot podcast, where we share first-hand experiences, practical advice, and insights from pilots at every stage of their journey. I'm your host, Dave Angus, and whether you're just starting out or working towards your next rating, we're here to help you navigate the path to becoming a pilot. So buckle up, stay tuned, and let's talk all things aviation.
This podcast is brought to you by Genesis Flight College, Canada's premier flight centre. With an advanced fleet of Diamond aircraft and experienced instructors, Genesis Flight College provides top-tier training in the heart of southern Georgian Bay. Ready to start your journey to becoming a pilot? Inquire today.
Welcome back to the Becoming a Pilot podcast. Today we have Tyler once again, becoming a staple on the show. It's good. Today we're going to talk about the recipe for success for a student pilot, whether that be in the integrated program, whether that be a cadet program, and whether it be even for your first job, right? How are you going to be successful in this industry and coming prepared for your lesson? That's a big one for us, right? And it can always be kind of a tough one, a tough transition for new students as to what the expectation is. So what our purpose is to try to kind of clear that air as to what's expected of you as a student. So you don't have to ask that uncomfortable question to your instructor as to what am I really supposed to do, right? We know that the lessons are normally like 2-hour blocks, right? So you come in for a 12 o'clock appointment, but do you show up? It's not a doctor's office where you show up at 12 and you're actually seen at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah. Try to keep on time.
Right.
So let's discuss it. Let's talk about what kind of the best course or best plan is for any student getting into this.
Yeah. So we have something called the Flight Training Manual, the FTM. So that breaks down all the lessons, and it's very structured from beginning stages to getting your license. So it goes through all the lessons in order. And so on day one, you don't really need to know a heck of a lot, but as you progress, you'll know after the first lesson what your next lesson will be. So, you talk to your instructor about exactly the plan for the next flight. Then you go home, you prepare reading that FTM, that purple book, and then come early. There's a couple of things that you can do in advance of the actual reservation start. So you can do your weight and balance. If you've been shown how to do that, once the aircraft's back, you could do a walk around if you've been shown how to do that and signed off for it. And you can get our yellow sheet, our checkout sheet started as well. So quite a few things that you can do to prepare for it. And then the more you know, the more knowledge you have, the better. So study.
That makes it a lot easier. Well, you're saying there, reading the flight training manual and discussing with your instructor. I think that's a big thing at the beginning. I know here we have a pretty good system, so you should know what your next lesson is. But whether you go here, whether you go to any flight school, really, having that communication and knowing when you leave the lesson before what your next lesson is, that should be on the responsibility of the instructor. But we forget and things happen, whatever. Yeah. Ask what's going to be the next thing. Chances are it's going to be the next lesson that's in the flight training manual.
Yeah,
right.
Goes through a logical order.
Yeah. And that flight training manual, a lot of times, as Perry said once when he was on here, was that people he'll ask them to pull out a textbook and it's still covered in cellophane, right? Like,
yeah.
Get that thing out. There's so much information there, and we know that. And if a new student hasn't already learned it, they will learn it. That the cockpit is a terrible classroom, right? It's very, very difficult to learn new things there. But also when we talk about how we remember stuff, if we read something the night before and then implement it 24 hours later, our chance of remembering that information has gone up exponentially. We can review it in that 24 hours, which is coming and doing the flight. And then maybe again within 24 hours to 48 hours.
Yeah.
And we keep slowly reviewing it and snowballing it so that that knowledge, we can retain it and move successfully through the training. So it's, when we talk about, you were saying the first lesson, attitudes, movements, taxiing, all that, sure. There's not too much that you need to read about that. It's not going to, you're not going to learn anything really groundbreaking out of the flight training manual, but it will give you some good understanding. I always found that when I got in the first time was the rudder pedals, right? It's not like driving a car, right? It's something, unless you were maybe like a kayaker or a rower that had rudder pedals, you're not really going to understand how they work. And then the toe brakes is completely wonky.
Yeah.
I don't think I learned those until until I was done my commercial training.
Or if you grew up on a farm, maybe you've used tractor.
Sure, tractor stuff, yeah. But for the most part, people aren't, it's totally foreign, right? So learning how those work, learning where different controls are in the airplane is always good. But for the most part, we want to start reading ahead. If my next lesson is going to be stalls, read the stalls section.
Definitely.
Maybe even highlight some things, some major points, write down some questions.
Yeah, if you don't fully understand anything.
Right. That's always a good one when students come in with some questions.
Oh,
It shows
preparedness.
Yeah, it shows that they're interested and they're primed and ready to learn, right?
Yeah.
That's always the big thing, is coming in with that mindset of wanting to learn.
Yeah.
It's a very long journey if you're not 100% in on it.
Yeah.
And honestly, there shouldn't be too many people having to motivate you along the way.
Right.
It is a lot of work, but you have to want to do it. We always say that drinking from a fire hose, you'll hear it a million times.
Yeah.
But it's so true, especially the PPL. I actually talk to a lot of PPL students and say it's probably the hardest rating to get because everything is new.
Yeah.
We always say, oh, the test is easy, the tolerances are bigger and all this, but we forget that you've only been flying for 40 hours or 50 or 60, but not a long time.
Right.
That's a very short amount of time. And that 60 hours may have been spread over 3 years, right?
Yeah.
For some people.
Right. Yeah.
So it's not a lot of time to learn a totally new concept, both the practical side and the theoretical side.
Right.
And unless you come from a background where you have a background in physics, math, this could all be very difficult, right? So reading the flight training manual before every flight is huge. Now, you were saying coming in early, and things like weight and balance. If you haven't been taught that, the first few lessons we normally book a few hours anyways because we know it's going to take a long time.
Yeah.
Because we got to go through everything. But yeah, once you know that and you're getting into the meat and potatoes of your training, showing up early and getting that stuff done. Now, you show up how long in advance? Actually, would you say let's do
Half hour.
Half hour minimum.
Yeah.
And that reigns true right through your career. Now, when you get to the airline, it's going to have to be a lot more, maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours, depending on where you're at and what you got to help.
Yeah, how far you have to travel. There's a lot of factors. Right?
A lot of factors, but I always try to remind people, like, start treating this as your first job, right?
Exactly.
Not only is it going to instill good habits, good discipline, but it also, you don't know, we've talked about this on other podcasts, is that you don't know who's in the room watching you. And there may be somebody that is from an airline that's part of the hiring committee, and you show up early and you're always on time, always prepared. You don't even know who your instructor is. Look, we've got instructors here that are airline training captains. We have ex-military pilots. We've had instructors here that currently fly for airlines. And you have no idea what kind of reference. We know that in the airlines, references are huge, massive.
Exactly.
So you never know who you're impressing, right? So showing up half hour early, getting everything done. What if the airplane's not here? What could somebody do?
Yeah. Well, like we said, the weight and balance is one thing. So you don't know how much fuel is in the plane, but we can assume full tanks. That covers us for the worst possible outcome, or the heaviest weight rather. But other than that, reviewing your notes, and simple things like getting the yellow sheet done, the checkout sheet. You can fill in your name, the instructor's name, any other information that you can grasp. You can check the documents for the aircraft. So check the journey log. It might not be up to date if the aircraft's not back, but you can at least identify any snags, anything that's in the journey log. And then you can also look at, the doc binder won't be there, but those are some things.
Right. I was saying, I know it sounds nerdy, but start reading the POH. Like, before you know it, you're going to get into a ground brief for your flight test.
Right.
And you need to know your systems. A lot of people, I find that's such a back burner thing. And then right before the flight test, they're cramming. I always try to remind people that we're flying airplanes. It's a pretty big, like, I know it seems, the more you do it, it seems like, oh, it's easy, it's mundane, it's whatever, right? It's a pretty big responsibility, right?
Definitely.
Not only for us, not only for our families that are expecting us to go home, but also the people on the ground. We can cause serious damage to people or property by not flying responsibly or safely.
Right.
But on top of all of that, if we know our systems, then we can better react and take better action in an emergency situation. If I know exactly what is going to affect me when my electrical system goes down, or a specific part of that system goes down, then I can know how to fix that, right? I always say that the biggest one in the Diamond aircraft is the emergency backup battery, right? What does that do? And it's always like, oh, it powers the G1000. Like, no, it doesn't do anything like that.
Right.
So knowing that system and knowing what you're going to get when you turn that on, maybe you don't need to do that. Maybe you've had a full electrical failure, VFR day. Why bother?
Right.
You got to replace that battery. There's costs associated with it. Not that we want to even think about that, but let's say it's your own airplane.
Yeah.
You don't want to have to replace that battery if you don't need to. So knowing that system is so important.
For sure.
And the more complex, if you'd still have good habits of learning the airplane when it's a little bit more simple, when you start getting into more complex airplanes, whether it be multi-engine training or whether it be airline training, type rating, that's going to take you to the next level, right? And and you're going to know what's expected, right?
Exactly.
So learning that, you said emergencies, I believe you were saying as well, right? Going over your emergency procedures.
Yeah. Reading the POH, figuring out the speeds for certain maneuvers.
It's a tough one too.
Yeah. I can't really think of too many more, like pre the aircraft coming back.
Yeah. I also say like checklists, just going over them, even though we're always going to pull them out and read them.
Yeah.
But going through,
You have extra time.
yeah, and like where it is. We're lucky here. We got the paper trainers everywhere, so you could go sip lap one, go through the checklist. But if you don't have that and you're just kind of couch flying or chair flying here, that's another good thing, right? Try to go through these exercises at home. Just, I know it seems silly, but close your eyes,
Coach flying.
and envision what you're doing.
Exactly.
Even if it's like, for a stall, right? You're just going through, okay, this is how I'm going to enter it, and this is how I'm going to recover it. You go nose down, full power. Well, the full power, what's that? Mixture prof throttle. Do my drag check. Pitch for my best angle of climb. Climb out, regain that altitude, right? Just kind of going through those motions so that it becomes second nature.
Yeah.
And then when you're in the airplane, you're not only going to save time, you're going to save money, right?
Right. Yeah. With our students, I mean, we give them access to our preparatory ground instruction, or PGI. So
That's big.
they can literally go home and review the actual PGI we're going to teach them in person. So they can get all those tidbits of information that are specific to our aircraft. So those speeds, those power settings, all of that stuff, right? So you can prepare quite a bit. And honestly, like in my training, I was always trying to impress my instructor with how much knowledge I had prior to the actual lesson. And I think that's a good mentality to have. Like, you want to come prepared. You want to utilize the time in the plane to maximize the amount of money you're spending, right?
Right.
So if you're prepared and you have a good idea and grasp of what's going on, then handling the plane seems a little bit easier, right? You have not as much stress going on when your instructor's, in your ear about something you've talked about a couple of times, and or you should already know prior to the lesson. So, yeah.
I find another part of coming prepared, we really see it when it comes to like cross country flying and what.
Oh yeah,
right,
for sure.
There's a lot that goes into that, and sometimes I just say to students, like, just do your best, right? You may not be 100% proficient. You may not even be right. Do your best. Try to plan your route, and just don't come in here and rush, because as soon as you start rushing, that's when things start going wrong, right? Whether it be once we get in the air and now you're so far behind the airplane, right? Or I actually had a student the other day, and the examiner's comment, so he had made a mistake on approach. It was for an instrument rating.
Okay.
He had made a mistake, but and the examiner said he was so far ahead of the airplane that it did not even matter, like, because he was able to catch it, fix it, move on.
Great.
He said it was fantastic, right? And that's kind of where we want to be at. And I find that starts from even just your
Basics.
Yeah, reading the flight training manual. You're one step ahead of the airplane now.
Yeah.
Now you come in here. Now you don't have to spend an hour on the ground wasting your time.
Yeah.
Because you've never read about stalls.
Right.
You don't understand how You know, what even is a stall? How does it work? What are the physics behind it? How do aerodynamics work? Whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then you can get into the airplane, practice it, and then you're not spending an hour and a half up in the airplane. You can spend an hour, right? So keep it quick.
Yeah.
And like we said, it bleeds over into the career, right? So what do you think is kind of like the best thing to make that good impression going into your first job, right?
Yeah, I think standard operating procedures, kind of knowing that if you have access to it, and yeah, studying the aircraft and trying to learn the basics of that aircraft and its systems.
Which is exactly what we've said going into it. So that's how kind of why it's so important to start your flight training with good habits, good practices, being early,
Punctuality,
being early. We know sometimes we can get behind, but most of the time it's behind because, you know, someone maybe showed right at the flight time. Now we got to take time. We don't want to skip the lesson. Maybe sometimes we should, but we try to accommodate everybody. So we always say, you know, just do your part, and that's going to make you set you up for success. So
yeah.
I think that's kind of a good fundamental of how to come prepared, be successful in all your training, and that doesn't matter whether you're modular or ATPL or CPL. It doesn't matter. All of it all pertains to that, coming prepared and asking questions. Honestly, there's no dumb questions.
Exactly.
As much as we may joke around and say it's a dumb question, it's not actually a dumb question. We're just having fun.
Yeah.
It can be very silly, and don't worry about if you're starting a PPL or if you're ending a CPL,
Right.
or if you're past that. Just ask the question.
Yeah.
I always think of them as
People forget, right?
Yeah, it can be something that you learned so long ago that you just not even
Thought about it in a while, right?
And chances are, especially in a classroom setting, someone else has the same question. Yep. The vast majority of the time, someone has the same question. They're just too scared to ask it, and just ask it. Takes a little bit of vulnerability, but it is what it is, and then you're gonna get the right answer.
Right. Another benefit I would like to add about being prepared for lessons upcoming. Let's say you're trying to learn something difficult like instrument flying.
Right.
One thing that I used as a training aid for myself was a recorder. So I hook it up to my headset and then I plug it into my phone.
Like an audio recorder.
An audio recorder, right? So not necessarily do you have to get the video, but the audio is, you know, it's worth its weight in gold. So you can record the flight and then you can listen back to all those calls, all those clearances, all the fine details of the flight. Things that you constantly might forget, or like, you know, all the drills and procedures. So it's like, I think that especially for pilots going on their first cross country and do, like, let's say, controlled airspace or complex airspace, the recordings are really valuable. You can play those back and run through the scenario again in your head. If you messed up a call, like with the flow of the call, you can just, you know, go over that again and prepare much better for the next flight. So
it's always, I really like that because you can hear yourself.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And I'll say, like, from even just doing the podcast, right, listening to certain things of you know, ahs or whatever, right. A lot of people will key the mic and start talking, and it turns into this really slow. I'm at this altitude, and when you listen back to it, then you can hear that and you can make adjustments, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I always liked listening to, like, live ATC, right?
Yep.
Listening to
Good reference.
people getting clearances, people talking to ground tower, whatever, doesn't matter.
Right.
But the tough thing with that is that now you're listening to professionals who are all really good at it, which is fantastic. It's great. You can copy that, emulate it into your training, but you don't necessarily know how you sound.
Right.
Which is really good.
Exactly.
I always like to say as well, kind of adding on to that, was at-home flight simulators. I love that for my flight training. It's not for everybody. Maybe not everybody has access to that. But I thought it was worth its weight in gold, investing whatever $500 or $600 in a full setup, and then you do stalls, go into the flight sim at home, and redo it there.
Yeah.
I thought that was an awesome training aid for me.
Right.
Maybe not for everybody, but I found visually that really helped. Going through some of the procedures really helped.
Yeah.
And then even when it came to, like, circuit lessons, I can change the winds. Same thing that we would do here.
Right.
But instead of paying whatever it is per hour for an instructor and a simulator, I would just do it at home, right? I didn't have that access when I started my training, so that wasn't an option. Here we got that option, but I think that's a really good option as well.
Definitely.
It's all different things to get you all prepared, right?
Yeah, and you know, if you have friends, family, anybody that's in aviation, you know, you could always reach out, ask them. Tons of resources online, you know, YouTube videos, like endless amount of content. So there's a lot of things that you can pull at to increase your preparedness for a flight.
Of course.
Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I think that's a good stepping stone or a good segue into, you know, people getting into flying, and we'll set them up for success, right? As I just said, keeping it simple, asking questions, doing your homework, show up early.
Yep.
Simple as that.
Yep.
Somebody.
Awesome.
Thanks so much. Until next time.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks.
All right.